So when we look at the 12 hallmarks of aging, sleep benefits almost every single one of them. And we know, for instance, that women need more sleep than men, about 20 to 30 minutes more. Only about 3% of the population has the short sleep gene, and they can get away with less than 7 hours.
Dr. Sarah Zoll-Gottfried, she is absolute pioneer in women's health,
A Harvard-educated physician scientist with over 25 years of experience in functional and integrative medicine.
has a ton of incredible books on perimenopause, menopause, and women's health topics in general. Why is understanding our fat mass and muscle mass so important?
A lot of women may not notice that their weight on a body scale changes, but they lose about 5 pounds of muscle and they gain about 5 pounds of fat every decade after 40.
Let's talk about exercise.
There's still a bias among women that they're afraid of getting bulky, or they look at a 25 or 40 pound weight and they think, I can't lift that. And yet they'll lift a toddler that weighs 25 pounds. There are some women who are chronically stressed. They'll get a second wind at night. They'll suddenly feel super creative or be like, oh, I've got that email from my boss that I need to answer, and feel like, oh, I'm a night owl. I've got so much energy at night. No, that's probably cortisol. And so you want to try to turn that ship around. So I would say,
All right. Well, today on the podcast, I'm so excited to be doing another collaboration with Dr. Zoll. Yeah, yay. We actually have been spending the last few days together, which has been so fun.
so good.
We've spent some time in this nice chamber.
Every chance I got. Thank you for putting me in there.
I loved it. I love to be able to share these, tools with people that really are excited about them and enjoy it. So that's great. But today, we thought we would do something that we hope is super actionable for every woman listening. I've obviously put out my protocol on the protocol.Kayla Barnes, but I'm also very well aware that that is a lot, right? And it might not be a good fit for everybody. It might not be possible or even of interest to everybody. So what we thought we would do is go through each kind of what we would call pillars of health.
Sure.
And talk about the minimum effective dosage. So we're going to go through sleep, we're going to go through exercise, nutrition, even social connection, and talk about what the minimum dose is, what some of the science is behind it. And, if you really want to just go all out, what I'm doing. And, also if Sarah has any updates that, or tweaks to what I'm doing, I'm all ears. So super excited to bring this podcast to you guys. And thanks for being here.
Happy to be here. I love that we're going to make this relatable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be questioning you on things that I think are maybe a little less accessible.
Mhm.
One of the things we were talking about was 300 minutes of zone 2.
Yeah,
And it's hard to start there,
totally.
right?
Yeah.
So we'll be talking about where to start.
Yeah, I love that. Should we dive in with sleep first?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, you want to talk about some of the benefits of sleep, why we need it?
I mean, sleep is as close to a panacea as we have. It's where all the detoxification happens. You take those misfolded proteins and you clear them out in the lymphatic system. It's critical for your hormone balance, for mitochondrial function. So when we look at the 12 hallmarks of aging, sleep benefits almost every single one of them. So it's probably the most important longevity hack. And I think what I like to focus on is what are some of the sex differences and what are some of the gender differences. And we know, for instance, you probably have talked about this, that women need more sleep than men, about 20 to 30 minutes more.
Yeah.
I think the Aura data shows 24 minutes more.
Yeah. Some of the literature I saw, some of them even said as little as 11 minutes. I'm like, 11 minutes? I mean, come on, I've seen upwards to 20. But I mean, just N of one, I've experienced in my late luteal phase and up through early menstruation, my body requires more sleep even than 20 to 30 minutes sometimes. I'm sometimes closer up to 35 or so.
Yeah, the 20 to 30 is average, so it's good to keep that in mind for women who are menstruating.
Yeah.
And yeah, the luteal phase just puts a lot of demands on the female body. And for some people, they keep up with those demands. I think you do an impeccable job at that. But a lot of women don't realize it, and they often will run themselves into the ground.
Yeah.
So the luteal phase, I'm sure you've talked about it before, it's that period of time from ovulation until your period starts, whereas the follicular phase is the first half of the menstrual cycle, when your period starts until ovulation.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot more women are now starting to track, or at least I hope that, they're starting to track where they're at in their cycle, because I think it is powerful, to
It
just
is.
understand.
And I hope that we're inspiring women to maybe look at a few pieces here.
Mhm.
So, first of all, you need more deep sleep.
Yeah.
So, it's that increased amount of sleep to kind of hit the same targets with your composite scores. If you
Mhm.
use a wearable, you need 20 to 30 minutes more, and it's mostly deep sleep. And we think that part of that, the hypotheses and the science include that women have greater cognitive load
Mhm.
than men do.
Yeah.
And then we've got these hormonal fluctuations. Like, to your point about the luteal phase, you're making mostly progesterone in the second half of the cycle.
Yeah.
Estrogen is dominating in the first half of the cycle.
Mhm.
And progesterone is the key hormone of sleep.
Mhm.
And it's part of the reason why when women start to, 35 to 45, for when they have ovarian aging and their mitochondria are not working quite as well and their progesterone declines, that's when we start to see an increase in insomnia
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
overall double the rates of insomnia as
Yeah.
in men.
I definitely want to talk about what women might be able to do. But I think, just realizing that you don't have to wake up. So I, am obviously very blessed. I get to wake up naturally. And it just was the observation, like, oh, I'm sleeping more during this like luteal phase and early menstruation. But I'll talk a little bit about, I guess, what I'm doing, and
Yeah,
then you can
please.
critique it, and then
Yeah.
we can give people, baseline what they should be doing. So I go to bed at 8 p.m. pretty much every night. Of course, Sarah and I have been spending some time together. So
Yeah, I kept her up late one night.
yeah, but not. I think it was like 8:30 or so. I ended up heading to bed. But on an average day, I think consistency, and I'm sure that you'll agree, is one of the most important things. Like going to bed and waking up around the same time.
100%.
Super important. So we go to bed at 8 o'clock. I know that sounds really extreme. So that's one thing that I do. I'll quickly glaze over my wind down routine, and it's been fun to see when, your wind down routine is disturbed a little bit, which I'm sure so many people that are listening to this podcast, that occurs. It really impacts your resting heart rate. And when that resting heart rate is higher, you don't get as high quality of sleep. So for me, what I do is I eat early. So I'm done usually eating by 4 p.m. So early meal, and would love for you to, dive into some of the science as to why that might matter and why you might not have to eat so early either. But early eating done by 4. After we're done eating, as soon as the sunset comes out, we try to view the evening sunset. It sets right back over here, which is nice.
Smart.
So view that. And then once the sunset occurs, we have all the orange red lights on. I'll wear the red blockers. They're like the sunset versions that are red lenses at night to block, if my husband's watching television or I happen to look at my phone. But I do try to stay off electronics, at least an hour beforehand. Right before bed, I'll do some, long exhales, deep breathing, just trying to get that heart rate a little bit lower. And then sometimes I'll also do the pulsetto, which is, this vagus nerve stimulator, which I can't wait
You gave me one. I'm so excited.
to try. And, if I've had a higher stress day, that helps me just to shift into that parasympathetic. And then, our room, super dark, so blackout shades. We have the cool room, so about 65. I did just recently start trialing the 8 sleep, which I do like. I thought it was really cool. I saw a little notification on there that says there's like a hot flash mode too.
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know too much about that, but you might be able to talk about
Yeah,
it.
I don't have hot flashes, but
Yeah.
I'm excited to see it as a feature.
Yeah, because you're on like bioidentical hormones.
I've never had a hot flash. I
Okay,
mean,
that-
I did when I was postpartum,
Uh-huh.
which is like a conversation for another time,
Yeah.
but not during
Amazing.
perimenopause.
Well, you'll have to give women either on this podcast or some other podcast that we do all the tips, because I'm sure that would be super helpful. So for sleep, that's pretty much what I'm doing. So what would you say is, of course, if you can't go to bed at 8 o'clock, what time should women get into bed by? How much minimum sleep do you think that we need? And what would maybe you say the top takeaways for sleep hygiene that women can take away from this pod?
First, I would say that from all the longevity data on women, 7 to 8.5 hours is really the minimum.
Hmm.
And I tell that to a lot of women I take care of, female CEOs, and they often push back on that. And they're like, I function just fine with 6 hours, 6.5 hours. And what I see with those women is that they're driving themselves. They're overriding their own physiology. Only about 3% of the population has the short sleep gene, and they can get away with less than 7 hours. So I tell women, be in that wind down routine that you described so beautifully. Start that by like 9:30 at the latest. And we'll get into the science of why I think 8 o'clock is actually better. But the way I think of it, and this also has some Ayurvedic principles, so some ancient principles behind it. I was always taught in Ayurvedic medicine that you want to catch the angel train by 10 o'clock. It comes to your house at 10 o'clock. And if you aren't prepared, if you haven't done, as you're describing, that wind down from stress, wind down in terms of your resting heart rate, slowing down your exhale and extending your exhale. If you haven't done the preparations, maybe a hot shower. I noticed you did that every night. Hot shower or bath, ideally 60 to 120 minutes before you go to bed. Those things will help you catch the angel train. So another critical part is food timing. We know that our DNA evolved to have metabolic rest. So this idea that I kind of grew up with, that you have dinner really late with your friends at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, or, in some European countries and even later, it's not good for your metabolism. So we know that at least 3 hours of no food before you go to bed is critical. So you start eating at 4, you're done by like 4:30 or 5, and that gives you ideally 3 to 4 hours before you're going to sleep.
Yeah.
And that's the best because you want your gut to be mostly done processing before you go to sleep. It's really critical. So activate the parasympathetic nervous system, do that wind down routine, and maybe a little hot water to help you with temperature. You also mentioned that you keep your house cool, so 65 degrees. And we know, especially for women who are postpartum or in perimenopause and menopause, that the cooler temperature is actually better. So the ideal is somewhere around 64 to 67 degrees. So somewhere in there just helps you manage your temperature better because thermoregulation really changes for women as they get older. And I think that's one of the things I love about the 8 sleep is that it gives you really good metrics. And it also cools you. It uses AI, unlike a wearable like an Aura that is pretty much just a one-way download, right?
Yeah.
It just gives you your data and it doesn't use AI to optimize. 8 sleep does. So every morning I see, Autopilot made 27 adjustments to improve your deep sleep. That's what we want.
Yeah, I love that. I want to go back real quick and ask a couple of questions. So you talked about 7.5 to 8 hours being optimal.
7 to 8.5.
Okay, 7 to 8.5. Thank you. What should we be aiming for deep and REM sleep within those hours?
So that varies based on age.
Okay.
And I think we should look at your aura. So I love doing this with my patients. I'm so happy to do this with you.
I'll peek at what this day was.
Okay, so this is impressive. So this is a night where your aura data showed a readiness score of 89. You got a crown.
Yay.
Your sleep was 95. So this is impressive. Resting heart rate of 51. I know you vary usually like 40s to low 50s.
High 40s to low 50s. Yeah.
That's great. And your heart rate variability was excellent at 69. So for women in their 30s, the average is somewhere around 37 to 40.
Okay.
And those are all Aura users. Most of this data is from Aura.
Yeah.
They've got the largest set of women. It's interesting because our fastest growing demographic is actually women in this age group. So
I love that.
I love that too. So your body temp was down 0.3. Your respiratory rate was 14. And a lot of women who feel stressed, these are not the metrics we see. So for those of you who are listening, check out your respiratory rate. Like that's something that you can, as you're drifting off to sleep, you can consciously lengthen your exhale as you were describing, and you can try to get that down and train yourself to breathe less at night. Overall, women have a smaller tidal volume, so the amount of air that they inhale and exhale is smaller than in men. So our respiratory rates tend to be higher.
Is our heart rate a little higher too than men?
Our heart rate's a little bit higher.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you start to adjust for athletic conditioning, there's less of a difference. At most, when you look at people with athletic conditioning, the difference is smaller. It's like 7%,
Okay.
but still lower heart rate in men.
Yeah.
So with your sleep, this particular night, you went to bed at 8:27. You probably went to bed a little bit earlier than that, but
Yeah.
let's see. Let's look at some of this. So your latency was 18 minutes. Let's talk about that first.
Okay.
So this is how long it takes you to fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Sleep latency. And those of you who've got an Aura, you can check out what your latency is. You can also see it on probably Whoop and
Yeah.
8 Sleep. So normal latency is 10 to 20 minutes.
Okay.
So that's the first metric I like to look at, because I have a lot of people, especially with sleep debt, who go to bed and they're asleep in under 10 minutes.
Because they're so exhausted.
They're so exhausted. So it tells you that someone's got a deficit and we need to address it.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
your latency of 18 is perfect.
Okay, great.
And then your deep sleep was 1 hour and 25 minutes. Your REM sleep was 2 hours and 33 minutes. So those are pretty much in the normal range. The thing I would be curious about with you, Kayla, and this is something I work on with my patients, I like to aim for a deep sleep of about 2 hours.
Yeah.
Because women need more deep sleep and because it helps so much with hormonal regulation. And we also want your mitochondria to be as, effortlessly powered in your oocytes and getting you ready for pregnancy. So what I find, and this is somewhat paradoxical, deep sleep seems to track with gut health.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
I'd be curious, you had some antibiotics in the past couple of years. So I'd be curious, what was your deep sleep before the antibiotics?
Yeah, that's a great. We're going to be working on an upcoming pod. We're going to be talking about my gut health because it's definitely an area that I need to be re-optimizing for sure. Yeah, that's great. I'm sure I can look back because I've had Aura Ring for almost 7 years.
Yeah.
So
let's look back. Well,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
would be part of your N of 1 experiment.
what do you want people to aim for with the REM sleep? So if it's 2 hours of deep sleep, what is the goal for REM?
So REM, I would say, is about the same. The thing about REM that's interesting, it's your dreaming time. So I'm looking at a couple different things. I'm looking at if you are getting more REM sleep than your average, that often can mean that you've got a sleep debt.
Okay.
So sleep latency and then REM sleep are two things that I'm looking at for sleep
Okay.
debt. You don't seem to have a sleep deficit, but I'd want to let's look at another night.
Yeah,
So
go for it.
we'll look at Sunday. That was Saturday. And I always like to look at the weekends versus the weekdays. I think your numbers actually look pretty similar, which is what you want.
Yeah.
But a lot of
But
people
that's really-
socialize on the weekend. And
I don't socialize, but I think I have this thing in my brain almost that's just like I tend to sleep a couple of minutes longer. I don't think a massive amount, but I'll be sleeping longer on the weekends because I know I don't have to wake up and do
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Is that a real thing?
that's a real thing. So,
Yeah.
for a lot of women, especially those that have a big mission in the world, the anticipatory stress of kind of waking up and hitting it hard first thing in the morning is different Monday through Friday than it is on the weekend.
Yeah.
So
Working to condition that
yeah,
out.
we got to
but-
condition that out.
But I
So-
think it still exists.
So this is interesting. So looking at your Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
where your REM sleep, as I said, was so Saturday, your REM sleep was 2 hours and 30 minutes. Deep sleep was about 1 hour and 25 minutes. And then comparing it to Sunday, and then Sunday, of course, is when people have more anticipation about waking up Monday morning.
Yeah.
You had 1 hour of 30 minutes of deep sleep, so consistent, but your REM sleep was 1 hour and 41 minutes.
Okay.
So it seems like you might have caught up
Mhm.
with any sleep debt that you had. I don't think you have much sleep debt compared to
Probably not.
most of my patients, but it seems like you caught up.
Okay, nice.
The other thing I'm looking at, and I know you don't do much of this, we'll have to talk about it, but I have a lot of patients who are in their 30s and 40s. They're noticing their sleep is not quite what it used to be. They have trouble with that wind down routine.
Yeah.
And so they pop a gummy.
Oh, okay.
And so they're taking cannabis. And cannabis can rob you of REM sleep.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for that too in my patients.
Does it increase your resting heart rate too?
Yes.
The cannabis? Yeah.
And decreases heart rate variability.
Yeah.
So does alcohol.
Yeah. I don't do that though.
Yeah, I know you don't, which I love. So, the cool thing with you is that so many of these variables are controlled.
Yeah.
So you can really see a lot of consistency. So now I'm looking at Monday, bedtime 8:23. You're like a model citizen. Wake up at 4:47 a.m. Total sleep 7 hours 40 minutes. So you're right in that 7 to 8.5 hours.
Nice.
Deep sleep of 2 hours.
Yay.
Queen.
I got good sleep that night.
REM sleep an hour and 45 minutes.
Okay, so that's like a perfect night.
That's a perfect night. And your your latency was 10 minutes. So you're still in that 10 to 20 minutes.
Nice.
So I'm pretty happy with that. Now let's superimpose Sarah Gottfried. Sarah Zoll comes to visit. I'm not guessing my ex's name here. Okay, so you went to bed a little bit later when I arrived.
Yeah.
On did I come Thursday? I don't even know what day today is.
I think it was Thursday.
Yeah, so
Saturday.
So you were helping me figure out how to do the H-bot, and you sacrificed your sleep.
I also had a little bit of anxiety because I'm like, I hope she's going to be able to get out okay. I was thinking about it as...
You're a little worried that I was going to sleep in there at night.
Yeah. It was the first time actually that I had some rumination in a long time because I was like, I hope she's going to be okay and doesn't get stuck.
Well, it was super sweet. I mean, you kept your phone on for me. That's true
good.
love. So you went to bed at 9 that night, which is an hour later than you usually go. And we woke up and did a workout in the morning.
Yeah.
So total sleep was still 7 hours and 30 minutes. Your deep sleep was an hour and 30, so not quite as good as the night that we just talked about. Your latency was 8 minutes. So
interesting.
So that's a good example of how if you're going to bed later than usual, your latency might be a little bit shorter.
Yeah.
Because your body is trying to adjust.
Yeah. And you're also probably more tired, right? Because you're used to
more tired. Yeah, totally.
Well, I love this. I think this is super helpful for anyone with a wearable, but I also love that we have some really actionable pieces here for sleep. One other question that I had. So you talked about the angel at 10 o'clock. Are there benefits to women's hormones and like our biology for getting into bed before 10, or is that a myth?
It's a good question. So I would say the kind of patterns that I see in female patients, and I've taken care of like 30,000 now, I see a pattern of women who've got issues with their cortisol. So cortisol, I think, is the most important hormone to be paying attention to. Cortisol, insulin, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, thyroid. And what I see with cortisol is there are some women who are chronically stressed, whether they recognize it or not.
Yeah.
And they'll get a second wind at night.
Yeah.
And so it might be 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. They'll suddenly feel super creative or be like, oh, I've got that email from my boss that I need to answer. And they kind of go into this performance mode.
Yeah.
And feel like, oh, I'm a night owl. I've got so much energy at night.
Yeah.
No, that's probably cortisol.
Yeah.
And so you want to try to turn that ship around. So I would say if you don't know about your cortisol pattern, that's something we want to check. I like to look at a 4-point cortisol. So first thing in the morning, cortisol awakening response, and then around noon, afternoon, and then before you go to bed. And if you're someone who's got insomnia, you also want to check it in the middle of the night along with the melatonin.
Okay.
So that's one of the patterns I see. So hormonally, yes, it improves your cortisol the next day to go to bed early and to be in this pattern of sleeping with the circadian rhythm. It also helps your melatonin, and it helps, I don't know if there's data on estrogen and progesterone in terms of going to bed earlier, helping with those hormones, but we do know that the more healthy and normal your estrogen and progesterone levels, the more you sleep.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, amazing. Well, great takeaways for that. Let's talk about exercise next. Let me pull up what I do, and then let's talk about what might be a little bit a great place to start. So as I'm pulling this up, so I program my workouts I try to hit every single area of longevity. So we have cardiovascular workouts, we have VO2 max training, we have, 1 day of high intensity interval training that I actually think of it more so like a power training to keep those fast twitch. We talked about doing the burpees and the box jumps, and I love jumping for the bones. Then we also, of course, have strength training. I mean, I'm strength training right now about 5 days a week, which is obviously, on the high end. So, okay, protocol, 10,000 steps per day. 1 hour of strength training 5 times per week is what I'm doing. 1 high intensity, and that's to focus on the bone density, the fast twitch muscle fibers, mitochondrial health. I'm doing 300 minutes of zone 2 training per week, and then I'm doing mobility, balance, and stretching. On this protocol page, you can see exactly what I did. I did have a cool experiment when I took my cardiovascular age on Aura from -6.5 to -11.5 over the course of 6 months by incorporating, for the first time back then, the VO2 max training. So for VO2, I'm either doing kind of like a Norwegian 4x4, like sprints, and then recovery, or I'm doing the Carol bike, which is an AI-powered bike and has a VO2 max training on that. So what are your thoughts on all those areas? Anything I should change, anything alter, and how can women, start doing something to really focus on longevity with their exercise?
So let me ask first, how long is all of this taking? Do you know the total amount of time you're spending?
I would say about an hour and a half per day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's 6 or 7 days a week.
Let's say 6. I mean, sometimes I will do an extra day, but only if I feel up to it and I enjoy it.
Okay.
But we'll say 6.
Okay. So that's 9 hours a week.
Yes.
And so that's 540 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is great. So anyone who is able to do that, I would say the body is designed for that. Like the female body especially loves that level of movement.
Mm-hmm.
But for someone who's like barely able to schedule time for exercise, it's not a great place to start. Yeah. So I would say the minimum effective dose here is begin with zone 2.
Mm-hmm.
So zone 2, as your listeners probably know, is where you're at 60 to 70% of your maximal heart rate. Do you know what your max heart rate is?
I do wear a chest strap, but let me think. So you usually calculate that by 220 minus your age, right?
Yeah, so that's kind of the official way to calculate it. You can also do it with VO2 max testing. You can determine, or a stress test.
Okay. I have this new VO2 max. I wish we would have had time to try it out at home, but I will have an official VO2 max here soon because I have this at-home device. It's called the Calibri, and it's a couple $100, which is really nice because I looked at one before and it was the VO2 Max Master and it was like $6,000 for doing it at home. So this one, if it were, I'll report back on the data. Yes, I'll share it with you. But if we can get that for a couple $100, that would be amazing. So, I mean, with that being said, I guess off the top of my head, I don't know what my max heart rate is. I could pull some Carol data because I wear the chest strap when I do that VO2 Max training. And I mean, I see it get into the high 170s, low 180s.
Yeah, so you're, if we use 220 minus your age, you're 34, right? So 186
is what it should be.
That's the max heart rate.
Okay.
So then if we calculate your zone 2, that's, we can just do it together and you can do it for your age, for the listeners who are with us right now. So I'm going to my calculator. So 186 times 0.6 is 111.6. So basically 112 beats per minute. And then 0.7 times 186 is 130. So your zone 2 is 112 to 130.
Okay.
And a lot of the trackers will measure that for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I always, like when I'm using an Aura, I turn on the heart rate monitoring when I exercise because I want to capture how much time I'm spending in zone 2.
Yeah, I love that. I've never done that on Aura before, actually. So
we're starting to do that together when we work out.
Yeah, I love that.
So this is where you can still carry on a conversation. You can speak in complete sentences, but if you're walking fast, or you're walking on a treadmill with like an incline.
Mm-hmm.
So not so much that you're huffing and puffing and can only say a few words, but that's what zone 2 training is. And so what I love about zone 2 is that it's so good for your mitochondria, and it's the foundation for exercise. It builds a base for you.
Yeah.
And I like to talk a lot about, this is a big part of my next book, how women need to build their base camp. And base camp includes all these things that we're talking about. They're the things that don't require a prescription.
Yeah.
They're mostly lifestyle medicine. Some folks call them the boring basics, but they're the things we really want to dial in, like sleep and movement and connection. Nutrition is such a critical part. Emotional sobriety. So all of those things we want to be paying attention to. And with Zone 2, I would say start with 150 minutes per week.
Okay.
So you're getting 300 minutes, which is double the goal.
Yeah.
But your mitochondria are super healthy and you've been training and exercising pretty much all of your life. Like you were a gymnast when you were younger.
That's very true. And I build it in too. So every morning I go on a walk, which we got to do our morning sunrise walk. And that's dual benefit, right? We get nature, we get the sun, and we get to do a brisk walk. So I enjoy that. And then I build it in. So if I'm on calls throughout the day, I try to make it a call that I can take a quick walk, So if you are struggling with the timing of it, there are potential little slots that you can find. It also breaks up your day. So I really enjoy that.
Totally agree. And I love a treadmill desk for this too. So if you've got a treadmill desk where you can do an incline, you can get into Zone 2. I sometimes have to use weights to get myself into Zone 2.
Yeah.
So I
Like an
love
ankle weight or something? Or?
ankle weight or sometimes hand weights. It's a little harder to type on my laptop with that, but I want to make sure my heart rate's in that zone.
Yeah.
So I would say that's where you build your base, minimal effective dose. And if you start with 150 minutes of Zone 2 and you're super consistent about it. So that might be, if you think of 150 minutes, if you do 30 minutes, 5 days a week, that's a good way to do it.
Nice.
So then you want to start to build on some of these changes that happen. And I like how you mapped the way that you've gotten to your exercise protocol based on longevity. So we know, for instance, that there's all these different muscle fibers. When I went through biology, which was a million years ago, there were 2 muscle fibers, right? There was the fast twitch and the slow twitch.
Yeah.
And now there's 7.
Oh.
So there's, women tend to have more of the type 1, which is the endurance slow type of muscle fibers. But there's this other class that you want to be aware of, which is 2X. And the 2X muscle fibers are the type that are designed for explosive movements. So as you were describing, your box jumps, your burpees, plyometrics, if you're not using those 2X muscle fibers, they start to disappear around age 40.
Yeah.
And as early as your mid-30s. So you're paying a lot of attention to that, and I want all women to do that. So I would say dial in the consistency with Zone 2 training, then start to add on some of these explosive movements. And I think what you were describing with, you do HIIT power training. So that's where I like to begin. And there's lots of different ways to do it. I use an app that helps me with these plyometric movements and burpees because I basically need someone to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I need a babysitter. And
Yeah. I'm that person for all my friends when we work out.
Yes, of course.
They're like, I just show up. Kayla wrote the workout. We're good.
Yes. Well, it's amazing to be a leader in that way. And then you also said you do 10,000 steps. I imagine a lot of those are Zone 2, maybe some are Zone 1. And I like how you're combining it with morning light exposure.
Yeah.
Which is so critical for sleep. And since women have double the rate of insomnia, we want to do everything to help her sleep and help her mitochondria.
Yeah.
And then strength training. So I think strength training is the most important piece here.
Yeah.
And I became obsessed with strength training when I was in college. And I just couldn't believe how you could change your body composition so dramatically with heavy weights. And so not these, 2 to 3 pound weights that are popular in bar class or other dance classes. I like heavy weights. And there's still a bias among women that they're afraid of getting bulky, or they look at a 25 or 40 pound weight and they think, I can't lift that. And yet they'll lift a toddler that weighs 25 pounds.
Yeah.
So I think it's really critical for women to understand that you're probably lifting these weights anyway.
Yeah.
Why not hang on to them and be more intentional about it? So you're doing a lot of weightlifting. You're doing 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, right?
Well, in
Of
total
strength training?
exercise, no 5 days a week of strength
5,
training.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say for most women, the data shows a benefit with a dose as low as 2 times a week for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But I
love
don't
that.
think that's really sufficient. I think
Yeah.
you start there, you get consistent, and then
Yeah.
you build from there.
Yeah.
So I like minimum 3 to 4 days a week.
Yeah.
So
I love
build
that.
up to that.
I wanted to ask you real quick. We should start to develop or think through goals for women, right? So like push-ups, like this is just coming out of my head, but like 15, do you think women should be able to do 15 push-ups, 12 push-ups? Like if we were to create, like, let's say, maybe 12 to 15 push-ups, running a mile in less than 9 minutes. Like what are some, being able to deadlift your body weight, or like are there some goals maybe we can think through for women?
Totally. I mean, I think they vary depending on age. You're a gymnast, so you can probably, totally kill me in terms of the number of push-ups you can do. Can you do a pull-up? I imagine you probably can.
I haven't done one, but I used to be able to do like 10. So that was my peak.
That's so
But
fun.
once we get to, I'm excited to see what has occurred when we get our deadlifting rack back up, because I will have a bar again. So
That's great.
yeah.
Yeah, so I would say see how it goes. Like, see if you can hold a plank for 1 to 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And if you can't, then that's your first goal. Hold a plank for 10 minutes. If you can do 90 seconds, then your next goal is to hold it for 2 minutes. And if you can do that and your form is really impeccable and you're straight as a board, then that's when you add on the push-ups.
Yeah.
So I would say most women should be able to do 20 to 25 without a lot of effort.
Yeah.
Some people might need to start on their knees, or they might need to, be on a bench to be able to do it. So start wherever you are and build up to a really strong plank. We don't want any shoulder injuries, which become a lot more increased in women over 40. And you want to make sure you take care of your rotator cuff and that you've got, scapular strength and stability. And then add on. So 25 is where I would start.
Push-ups, 25.
Push-ups.
1 pull-up is the goal.
I think the place you start is with a wall hang.
Okay.
So be able to hang, if you can hang for ideally 2 minutes, that's sort of my threshold. Some women can start with a minute. Some women need 30 seconds, like especially if they've got a shoulder injury. You have to be careful with that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it'd be fun. We should think through like a longer list of goals, because I personally love like operating off of goals. Okay, great. I wanted to touch on body composition, why it's important to look at maybe a bioimpedance scale. I brought up mine that you can take a peek at. My metabolic health right now says I'm 25, which is great. But something that I found to be really important is, so if we look through this, my weight is actually, will it say my actual weight here, or? So I don't know if this is like body fat and then mass, but my weight actually went up by a pound over the course of the last couple of months. But if we see here, I mean, it's because I'm adding in muscle, right?
Yeah, we love that.
So when we first moved into this house, I only had really minimal weight, so I wasn't able to really lift heavy. And I saw like just maintenance, a little bit of decrease. But why is understanding our fat mass and muscle mass and bone health so important, not just the number on the scale?
Yeah, I would say this is an example of measure this, not that.
Yeah.
So the old way of looking at your body weight, like getting on a bathroom scale, I would say is out. It's what my mother did, and it made me crazy listening to her talk about her weight almost every morning. So what we want to focus on instead is, how are you metabolizing glucose? And the main way you do that, the main sink for it, is your muscle mass.
Yeah.
It's your metabolic engine. It is the organ of longevity, as Gabrielle Lyon says.
Do you think there's like a lean mass number that we should be aiming for as women?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, generally, the way I look at it is you want to benchmark as part of base camp.
Okay.
Benchmark your current lean body mass and then grow it, or at the very least, maintain it over the next few decades.
Yeah. I think mine right now, so I have the Way Things Smart Scale. I think my lean mass, I don't know if it's on that one or not, but it's on there. It's just might not be on that page. I think it's 90%.
Yeah, that's quite good. So the trend that your tracker is saying is that you're losing fat, and that's what we want. So, what we know for women is that as estrogen starts to change during the menstrual cycle, and then especially over the age of 40, sometime between 35 and 45, we begin to shift our composition. And so a lot of women may not notice that their weight on a body scale changes, but they lose about 5 pounds of muscle and they gain about 5 pounds of fat every decade after 40.
Oh.
So that hasn't hit you yet, but what we want is to work against that.
Yeah.
Like, don't let this whole insulin resistance thing take hold. And so what I like to do is to look at fat mass. So with fat mass, we know that for optimal cardiovascular function, somewhere around 18 to 23% is ideal.
Yeah.
I've had times in my life where I was way above 23%. I'm at about 21% right now. And I had more cardiovascular risk associated with that.
Yeah.
So tracking your fat mass is really important.
What about individuals that naturally are a little bit lower? Do you think we have
There's a lot of
increased
people who
cardiovascular?
are athletes.
Okay.
I would put you in that camp because your fat mass is pretty low.
Yeah.
The main thing is, do you have enough essential fat, which is kind of the foundational fat from which you make your hormones, your sex hormones?
Is that 10 to 13%?
So it varies for women. There's not like a number across the board.
Okay.
But I would say, what we know with female athletes is that when they drop below a certain percentage, it's 10% for some women, it's 13% for other women. For some women, it's like 16, 18%.
Yeah.
They might lose their period because they don't have enough essential fat to make their sex hormones like estrogen.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to try to prevent. So this is a personalized thing. This is where N of 1 experiments become really important to know, okay, where's that threshold for you and how do we stay above it so that you're in that ideal cardiovascular range, but you're also making the sex hormones that'll help you get pregnant and help you ovulate regularly.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, well, I think we have some great actionable takeaways on that one. Last question I want to ask you is, so grip strength. I mean, I love having this at home. It's a cheap device, easy to do, and easy to make, fairly easy to make progress on, I've seen. What do you think women should be aiming for grip strength? And maybe do we want to separate it by like either in your 30s or 40s or 50s, or just give a general like minimum?
Yeah, it's hard for me to give a number across the board because I don't have them memorized, but I can tell you, I just looked at the data on grip strength, and it is stunning how well it predicts longevity. Stunning.
Yeah.
So it predicts your risk of chronic disease. It tells, you would think, okay, my grip strength can't tell me about my quad strength. Yes, it does. It correlates with your quad strength.
Yeah.
And quad strength correlates with longevity. So grip strength is one of the most proven, cheapest ways to measure longevity. And, you're in the 99th percentile, which is hashtag goals for most of us. I'm in like the 60th percentile.
And you have to just move in with me, and you're gonna be at the 100th
Clearly.
percentile.
Yeah, we'll do our wall hangs, moving to pull-ups, and then my grip strength will improve. So I would say aim for like 50%. If you measure your grip strength, maybe you're like me and you've had prophylactic mastectomies and your pecs aren't what they used to be and your grip strength is not fantastic, then you just improve it over time. So if you're starting at 10% or 40% or 60%, then that's your benchmark and you improve it from there.
Yeah.
I just had a board meeting with this group of mostly guys around this longevity startup, and we made everyone on the board do their grip strength. And it's so funny. Guys are like super competitive and they want to hide it and there's shame and, oh my God, what's your score? And yeah.
I've had a couple of funny instances where, people come over and I have the stuff out, and we've had guys come over and they do their grip strength and it's like 100 pounds. And then they're like, oh, is that good? And I'm put on the spot so bad
Yeah.
because I don't know what to say because I'm like, well,
Sure.
that's what mine is.
Yeah.
But my husband said, don't say anything. So we chopped it up because I was one time his friend was over. It was so awkward. I was like, well, what do I? It's okay. And he's like, just let it go, Kayla. It's fine. But you see, I'm a type 1 Enneagram. So I'm like, no, I think I need to tell them so that they know that they have to improve.
Right. Yeah.
So that's two. Yeah. I mean, we had so many great actionable items, but getting a grip strength tester, getting potentially a bioimpedance scale, this is really going to be beneficial to do at-home measurements,
Yeah, I like the at-home measurements, and I think it's good for a time series,
Yeah.
which is what you do
Yeah.
with your longevity
Yeah.
tracking. But I also would say the gold standard is a DEXA scan. So I would do that once a quarter, once every 6 months, just so you can make sure it's correlating with what you're seeing on your cheaper scale at home.
Yeah.
And I use InBody. I find that
Mhm.
that's really helpful. I used to use BodPod back in the day when the NFL was using that.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different ways to measure it. I would
Mhm.
say use something closer to the gold standard, especially if you're going to change your behavior.
Got it. One more question as it relates to the exercise area, bone density. I was at your talk today. That was fabulous. You said that 65 is the starting age for bone density scans. Is that right?
Yeah, so insurance in the United States pays for bone density to look at your bone strength at 65.
Okay. And when should we actually be looking at bone
I mean, the problem is you reach your peak bone mass between 30 and 35.
Mm.
So you're in your peak bone mass period right now. Yours is
Yeah.
probably amazing. And like, if it starts to decline at 30, don't you want to be tracking it? Like, why do you want to wait 35 years later?
Yeah.
And I feel like there's so many women, especially with GLP-1s, who have a risk of bone loss, and you don't want to wait so long to measure it. So I would say one of the top measurements that I like to look at in women is their bone density.
Mm.
And I want to do it, I would say at 40, 45. If you've got disordered eating, if you've got any sort of history of being thin, being underweight, restricting and having micronutrient issues, if you've ever been on steroids, there's lots of different indications for that, autoimmune disease and others,
Mm-hmm.
then check it sooner.
Okay. All right, great.
And you can also pay out of pocket for it. So
Mhm.
you could join a research study to get it measured if cost is an issue, or you could, I pay $75 for
Yeah.
a DEXA scan to be
Yeah.
able to look at this.
I love that. Okay, let's move on to nutrition. This is a very complicated area, right? Very controversial. Should people be vegan? Should they be carnivore? What are your thoughts on diet, amount of energy consumed for maintaining, healthy weight? And what does it look like for women?
Yeah, this is a loaded topic.
Yes.
And
we have a limited time
yeah,
because
I think we'll have to do another podcast
Yeah.
that's focused on nutrition because it
Yeah.
deserves a fair amount of airtime.
Yeah.
I would say the primary thing is to personalize.
Okay.
So one of the issues is more of an ethical construct.
Mhm.
And there's some people, I was just reading Tracy Anderson talking about being plant-based and how she thinks for people who are trying to get 100 grams of animal protein a day that it's unhealthy. So I wouldn't say that. I'm food agnostic.
Mm.
What I want is for people to eat the food that personally benefits their health the most, as well as their longevity
Yeah.
and their hormones.
Yeah.
So there's certain things that help your hormones more than others.
Mm.
Ultra-processed foods, not good.
Yeah.
More inflammatory. It's associated with a decrement in terms of longevity.
Mhm.
Dark leafy greens, so good for longevity.
Mhm.
Vegetables of any type, ideally 25 to 35 different species
Mm.
every single week. And that's something I want to work on with you because when you've been on antibiotics and you want to rehab your microbiome,
Mhm.
I would say 80% of it is with food.
Yeah.
So supplements can help. There's certainly things that can make a big difference, especially if you have dysbiosis or fungal overgrowth, but the food is really critical. And then there's the layer of metabolic function. So we know 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. And so we want to pay attention to what are the foods that create metabolic flexibility for you so that you can switch back and forth between burning glucose and burning ketones as needed, because that's what your body developed as part of this argument about metabolic rest. So I like continuous glucose monitoring to be able to dial that in.
Yeah, I love that. I was just going to bring up, because I actually have this, or no, you probably know as well, on my protocol, how to define metabolically healthy. And is this right? You want to have, okay, only 6%. So these are, if you have a high fasting blood sugar of over 100, triglycerides of over 150, is it any of these? If you have any of these.
So I would say these are more the conventional guidelines.
Okay.
And those are considered normal. So I think they're well supported by the evidence. But I don't want to be average.
Agreed. Yeah.
So I want to be optimal. And so what I would say for fasting glucose, I want it 70 to 85 milligrams per deciliter. I want triglycerides less than 100. I want fasting insulin ideally somewhere around 3 to 6. I want to look at an oral glucose challenge test. I want a continuous glucose monitor with the mean glucose less than 100 milligrams per deciliter and a standard deviation or glucose variability that's less than 15 milligrams per deciliter. So that's how I define metabolic flexibility. It's a different bar in the sand, but I think you want to eat in a way that really optimizes your fuel and optimizes your longevity, and that would be how I define it.
Can I ask you about this? The variability, is it less than 15 or 15 or less? So on your CGM, if you're looking at it, so you're saying after a meal, is this after a meal you want a 15 or less spike?
No, it's overall how much you spike.
Okay.
Like over the course of a day.
Okay, got it.
So Levels, for instance, gives this to you. Some of the trackers can give it to you. So it's, the problem with glucose variability is people who are more spiky, I'm kind of spiky if I don't watch my food carefully, they're the ones who cause more damage to their blood vessels. And you can think of damage to the blood vessels kind of like autoimmune disease. I mean, that's really at the root of coronary heart disease, which is the number one killer of women.
Yeah.
And so I think in terms of how do we fuel a person so that they are disposing of glucose, they're using their insulin the way it's supposed to be used, they're adjusting their glucose accordingly. And, what we know is that there's a time series to this, meaning that if you're someone who overeats or you're someone who consumes too many carbohydrates or processed foods, it affects your insulin typically 7 to 14 years before it shows up in your glucose.
Yeah.
So
what would
you want to
you
be looking upstream.
So if you're over 6, that is a big red flag.
So I wouldn't say a big red flag. I'd say it's a yellow flag that you want to start paying attention. And when I was 35 and I went and did some laboratory testing, I found that my fasting glucose was 105, 110, and my insulin was in the 20s. And so these all showed me that I had insulin resistance. I had prediabetes.
I like I like the HOMA-IR too, which obviously you do. What do you want to aim for a goal for that?
So I usually use the reference ranges that are offered by the laboratory testing, like I use mostly Cleveland Clinic to look at cardiovascular parameters. I just really trust their testing. But I see a lot of people who have a normal HOMA-IR who have early signs of metabolic dysfunction. So I don't think it's sensitive enough.
Interesting.
I think it's a good place to start, but I would much rather have continuous glucose data than
So would you rank it continuous glucose data and then insulin, fasting insulin? Like what would the hierarchy be?
The hierarchy would be continuous glucose monitoring, and then I would say a 2-hour glucose challenge test.
Okay.
Where you do a 75-gram glucose load, and then you look at your insulin and glucose every 30 to 60 minutes for 2 hours.
Okay, interesting. We should do that with me sometime.
We should, because what happens is usually your insulin after you eat is what changes first.
Got it.
And the fasting insulin is often later.
Okay. Yeah, we should do that. Okay, great. I mean, I think actionable takeaways, whole foods, right?
Whole
or
foods.
mostly?
I mean, we know, especially for glucose metabolism, like a lot of the data on plant-based foods is really good.
Mhm.
Now, I happen to eat, I'm an omnivore. I eat in an ancestral way, and that doesn't work for everyone. That's totally fine. But I would say the 2 diets that have been shown to be, or 3 diets that have been shown to be the best for metabolic flexibility are 100% plant-based.
Mhm.
No, none of that processed vegan food.
Yeah.
Number 2, Mediterranean diet. And I tend, a lot of women gain weight on the Mediterranean diet, like the sweet potatoes and the rice and the
Yeah.
grains are too much for them. So you want to see if that's a good fit. Often a low carb Mediterranean diet is a better way.
Mhm.
And then third is a ketogenic diet. But I usually prescribe keto.
Mhm.
And I talk about this a lot in my book, Women, Food, and Hormones.
Mhm.
I like to prescribe keto as a 4-week therapeutic pulse
Mm.
where you are doing an N-of-1 experiment to see if that's a good fit for you. Because some women get a lot of inflammation by switching to a ketogenic diet. And so we just want to see what's true for you.
Where do you think all the inflammation is coming from? Is it like the quality of the meat or just too much meat in
So
general?
it depends on your response to animal protein. There's some people who have an increase in their LDL and their ApoB on a ketogenic diet. So that's what you want to be able to track.
Okay. Well, the last pillar, I think, and we'll of course do more on all of these, but we wanted this to be an actionable takeaway for everybody, is social connection. I mean, we've had such a blessing of spending great high quality time together. But is there a minimum effective dose, and what does that look like? I mean, does connecting with your friends online fall into that bucket? I mean, this is one of the most powerful pillars of longevity.
It is a powerful pillar, and it's one that I would say defies cutoffs, quite like some of the other categories that we've talked about, because so much of it relates to the quality of your relationships, how much time in real life you spend, whether you've got secure attachment, whether you've got trauma that might be bringing up patterns in a relationship. And you and I were talking about this Hassler study that I think is really interesting to look at. So we know that social longevity is so important, and that, yes, these other factors like how much you're sleeping and how much zone 2 fitness you have, all of those matter, but the people you surround yourself with are also really critical. They change the way that your DNA is expressed. This is the whole field of social genomics. And so hanging out with someone like you've got secure attachment, you do what you say you do, you are incredibly supportive, you're so loving. It's people like you that have this benefit for the friends who are lucky to have you. And, healthy long-term marriages also show this kind of benefit.
Yeah.
They tend to be a little bit better for the men than they are for the women. Women benefit more from other women.
Yeah.
Girlfriend time, because we're so good at co-regulating.
Yeah.
So I would say secure attachment's important. This Hassler data is new. It's not been published in a peer-reviewed journal yet, but it's out in preprint. Maybe we could link to it in the show notes. What it shows is that if you've got someone in your life who is supportive, but also kind of a hassle, they're both, that's actually worse for your longevity. So I've been on this project of kind of looking at my relationships. I mean, family members, you've got hasslers and you can't do much about it, but the friends that are more optional, that are hasslers, I'm really looking at those relationships and whether it's worth continuing. So a lot of it is your emotional sobriety, how you stabilize, how you co-regulate others, how you re-regulate yourself. Are you able to do that with other people? Are you highly sensitive? Are you introverted? So being able to track all of those things and determining, okay, what are the connections that really support you in your longevity goals?
Yeah. Can we just say, can we say 1 hour minimum, or is it more, you think? I just want, if someone's listening and they're like hanging out with a friend like once a month.
I might have to come back with better data on this because, I mean, my sense is texting doesn't count.
Okay.
Being in real life where you're looking into the eyes of another person, you're feeling seen and heard and known, like that's what we know is really beneficial for social genomics.
Yeah.
There's this biological process that happens in your white blood cells that it's kind of like a fear response. And if that gets activated, we think it's not healthy or good for you. So I would say the relationships that make you feel regulated are the ones that really help. And so what's the dose? I don't know. Is it 10 minutes? Is it an hour a day? I'm not sure what it is. So I would maybe pose that back to you. Like, what do you find personally, Kayla, is the most regulating for you? What's the duration?
Well, I mean, it's twofold. So I kind of parse out time with my husband, which I have found incredibly, emotionally regulating for me. I mean, I don't know if there's truth to it, but I've heard like, people that when you're around people that you love and trust, like you fall asleep easier, right? Because you're more at
Yes.
peace, right?
Totally.
So if I cuddle my husband, I will literally get tired because I'm so relaxed with him. So for us, we always prioritize an hour at least every single day. Let me take that back. Not every day because I have upcoming travel. I'm a human and I do things, but most nights we oftentimes do 1 hour unless I'm out of town or he's out of town. And then from friend time, I try to prioritize, 1 to 2 hours at least a week. But that can look like for me, like, we work out together, we do health stuff together. My best friend Harper will come over a few times a week and we work out together. But we're also chatting and engaging and having fun and not being on our phones during that time as well, or a walk. So I try to do the 1 hour per day with my husband. And then I try to do, 1 to 2 hours minimum. And actually, I'm very excited to say I've had so many more hours recently with people that I really enjoy being around, like yourself. I mean, I love your energy, and I just feel like we never run out of things to talk about, but it feels so natural and it's just peaceful. Like I feel very relaxed around you, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
So I guess the more the better, but for me, minimum 1 hour with 1 to 2 hours per week with friends in place.
Yeah, I think that's a really good dose to start with. And then I would challenge our listeners to find what's the right dose for them.
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple things that are really important. One is there's this stress response, originally defined in men, of fight or flight. And what we know in women is that it's more complicated as usual. It's fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Fawn is people pleasing.
Oh, yeah. Okay, fawn. I need to write that down because you said that earlier and I didn't pick it up as well as I should have.
Yeah. So when women are in a stress response, you can imagine if we're on the savannah and we've got a toddler in one arm and an infant in the other arm, and we've got a predator coming after us. Like, it's not going to work very well to fight the predator or to flee.
Yeah.
It's much better to be surrounded by your circle of people, to tend and befriend. Even freezing or fawning is going to work better.
Yeah.
So women have different ways that they respond to stress. If you have relationships that put you into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, those are not good.
Yeah.
We want to avoid those. We want safety. And we want, especially if you get into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, we're designed to only be in that state for about 90 seconds maximum. And then we want to re-regulate by whatever means necessary back to the parasympathetic nervous system. So I would say find those relationships that create safety, like you and Harper, like you and your husband.
Yeah.
I was in a marriage where I was in fight, flight, freeze, fawn a lot of the time, a lot more than 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And it wasn't good for me.
Yeah.
And you could see it in my biology. You could see it in my elevated fasting glucose going back to my 30s.
Yeah.
And so we want to be thinking about how, when we consider longevity, how do we optimize your physiology through connection?
Yeah. I love that. Well, this has been a great episode, and I think we'll put the audio version out on both of our pods. But we can just, your socials, if you're listening to this on my podcast, where can people find you?
Yeah, the best place is my website, sarahzollmd.com. That's my name changed since I went through my divorce. And we're working with Meta right now to change over some of my handles. So a lot of them are still Sarah Gottfried, MD.
Yeah. We'll make sure to include all the links in the show notes. But Yeah, and if you guys are listening, please, leave us some questions that you have for us. We would love to read your comments, help answer your questions. Like our goal of our collaboration and partnership is really to just help as many women as we can. So if you have a topic that you want us to address, please just leave it in the show notes.
And sex and orgasm, we have to talk more about that.
Yes, that definitely is on the top list for the next pod. So
and peptides and hormones.
Yes, so many more things. So, well, thank you so much.
Thank you,
It's been so
Kayla.
fun.
Great to be with you.
Yes.